British defence policy should be exclusively aimed at keeping Britain safe. But is it? Instead of serving the national interest, our defence policy too often serves the interests of a cartel of defence contractors. Britain doesn't get military bang for the taxpayer's buck. Britain spends about 1/10 of what the United States spends on defence, yet we have far less than 1/10 of the United States' capability. In many areas, we can barely field 1 or 2% of what the Americans have in terms of capability. We are the second largest defence spender in NATO. We're the 5th biggest defence spender in the world. We're simply not getting value for money. Now, a few weeks ago, the UKIP Parliamentary Resource Unit published an excellent paper called Rethinking Defence Procurement, in which we set out some ideas and suggestions, and I think they're rather sensible and soft suggestions on what we could do to put this right. And first of all, we suggested that the default, not the exclusive approach, but the default approach should always be to buy a weapon system off the shelf. Yes, there are some weapon systems, I grant you, where we need to make it in-house, we need to have that capability. But if we want the best value equipment possible, we need to be prepared to buy things off the shelf. Now, it'd be perfectly possible for us as a nation state to build smartphones that were exclusively manufactured in the United Kingdom. They would probably be the size of a brick, there'd probably be a waiting list for them, and they'd probably run on clockwork. It makes much more sense for us to buy smartphones that are the result of international cooperation, with chips built in South Korea and designed from California and software from India. That international cooperation allows us to have smartphones that allow us to have a higher level of technology at less cost every year. We should apply a similar principle to defence procurement. Think of off-the-shelf procurement almost like urgent operational requirements, which I know the military rather like. In other words, the military can buy what it wants from whom it wants. Think of it as an urgent operational requirement, but without the guddle and without the rush. Secondly, I think we need to start consolidating not the supply side, but the demand side. By working with our allies, we could initiate joint procurement projects. This is not a case of us building and manufacturing things jointly. That would be a supply solution. But putting in procurement bids collectively with our allies, ensuring that in many areas we have a buyer's market where the buyer collectively can set the terms of trade. And I think we could do that with a number of countries around the world, not just European countries, not just NATO members, but countries around the world like Australia and India. If they need a weapon system and we need a weapon system, why don't we put in joint procurement bids with our Anglosphere allies? I think that would drive down prices and ensure that both we and our allies got better value for money. Thirdly, I would like to see Parliament having real oversight over the procurement process. Instead of just simply reviewing the MOD's annual report, I think the Defence Select Committee ought to be required to oversee and authorise major projects. We should take back as an institution, as a Parliament, the power to scrutinise what it is that the executive spends on our account. And I think specifically with defence, the Defence Select Committee should be required to approve and sign off on particular large projects. That sort of oversight would ensure that there was genuine accountability over procurement. Finally, anti-lobbying guidelines, I think, need to become law. I was delighted to hear my honourable friend and neighbour, the Member of Parliament for Harwich and North Essex, as Chair of the Public Administration Committee, making some suggestions about that the other day. And I think that's exactly what we need to be prepared to introduce. To make sure that, yes, the expertise that exists within government departments can be shared with contractors, but that there are public records of those contacts, and that where there is a revolving door, there is some accountability to ensure that nothing untoward happens. Britain needs a defence strategy that aims above all to keep our country safe. In an era of growing threats, constrained budgets, misspending is no longer a luxury that we can afford. We need real reform.
As to protectionism, we share his view that this is not something that is good for defence or good for the UK long term. Not because we don't want to support British industry, because we do, but because we recognise that protectionism provides no lasting solution. It does not give us the capabilities we need when we need them at a price we can afford. And above all, it does not help industry. it stifles innovation, it saps productivity, and it suppresses competitiveness. That's why we focus on competitive procurement with one of the most open defence.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.